So after healing from being a toxic productivity queen, I've learned over the years how to be productive in a way where I'm still getting things done, but I'm not burning myself out. And also in a way where I'm not constantly feeling bad about when I'm not being productive because I'm doing things in a way that I'm still getting everything I want done. So here is some healthy, sustainable, new productivity tips that can help you when you're trying to get something done. You have a specific goal, you're on a path, you're on a purpose, you're just a girly who gets things done. And if you're a guy as well and you're watching this, then sorry, you're gonna have to be a girl who gets it in this video. But first, if you have not already watched my first video of this part of healing toxic productivity, I would love for you to go watch that video first and then come back to this. I'll have it linked down below, because if these are all gonna be more like practical tips and to do things a new way. But it's gonna be very hard for you to do things a new way and be more sustainable and healthy with being productive if you have this nervous system that is in constant fight or flight, when you're doing everything out of toxicity, when you find your value and your self-worth strictly out of being productive. And on top of that, you have a nervous system that is primed to just do things in fight or flight and do things automatic whenever. Because the truth is, one of the things that I realized when it came to learning how to be more balanced, but be productive, feminine, masculine energy, slow things down, heal a nervous system, blah, 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 was not necessarily the act of doing things differently, but it was the inner critic and the voice inside my head that constantly told me that doing anything a different way was wrong. And until you really get in touch with that part, it's gonna be very difficult for you to do anything different. But let's get into the video. So these tips are going to be useful for someone who has a specific goal or something that you're really wanting to work towards. Like living a whole healthy lifestyle and being productive in general, these tips can help as well, but I'm gonna kind of narrow it down to just working on something. So for me right now, things that I have been working on is writing my book, which, guys, I'm writing a book, which some of you guys know, but if you're new, I'm writing a book, along with my job. And my job is being a content creator, the biggest thing, YouTube, and my podcast. So my first productivity tip is to know your energy. We have been taught for many years, society as a whole, has taught us that being productive means doing the same thing at the same time every single day and being the same kind of level of producing something. But the truth is, there's a whole nother part of us that plays into our lives, which is our energy. And our energy is more of that feminine expression, and both men and women have both masculine and feminine in it. And I'm going to be speaking from a woman's perspective, and many of my audience are women, but if you're a man, don't worry, it's still applicable to you. But our energy and things in general, they're very cyclical. We don't wake up every single day fueled at the same level of energy all the time. And when it comes to being productive and getting things done, a huge part of getting things done and being productive to the point where we're not burning out is understanding if we have enough energy to do so. Because if we don't have enough energy and we are very low and we force ourselves to do something that's very productive, over time we're going to burn ourselves out. And it's just not healthy and it's not sustainable. So capitalizing on when you have the most energy is definitely huge when it comes to being productive. Now, there's a few ways that you can do this. I'm gonna speak quickly from the woman's perspective, being somebody who is not on birth control and who is in sync with her cycle. I have certain phases. We as women go through phases, unless you're taking hormonal birth control, which will take your ability to really go through these phases naturally, but it's still very important for you to understand this. We go through 4 phases throughout the month. Every single month. We're very cyclical women. And there's gonna be certain phases where your hormones are fluctuating. You're gonna have a lot of energy sometimes and maybe not so much the other. It's totally gonna depend on your cycle, and everyone is different. If you want to understand more about cyclical living and understanding your cycle, please go watch my video. It's very long, but it's very in-depth as to understanding your whole menstrual cycle. But with knowing that information and knowing when I'm gonna be ovulating, which when I'm ovulating, I always have the most energy, and when I'm about to get my period, I have the lowest energy, I like to capitalize on that period of my life. And I like to do as much as I can when it comes to being productive, creating videos, content, and even doing social events, all that kind of stuff, because I know I'll have probably the most energy around that time. Now, you don't need to be following your cycle to know this. I'm sure you know when you usually have certain amounts of energy on a day-to-day or even a week-to-week basis, or even seasonally, right? There's just gonna be seasons of your life, especially in winter, where it's just like you're not going to feel that productive to do a million things. And that's okay. So really knowing where you fall and where your energy falls is gonna be huge, because I think that the most important, most aligned, most juicy, I don't know, like expression of you being productive is when you have that energy, when you have that life force that is going to be, you know, directed towards a certain thing that you're trying to be productive on. Now, not every single thing that you're doing really needs and requires you to have all of this energy, especially when we're talking about something creative. Having creative energy can be a little bit different, but still, it's always important to know that. But going back to knowing your energy, are you a morning person? Are you a night owl? When do you find you have the most energy throughout the day? Is it right in the morning? Is it the noon, or noon you're dipping down? After work, you have a spike of energy and then you're dipping. Like, knowing yourself is going to be so key and capitalizing on that, because that's gonna really help you when it comes to planning. The next tip is when you've decided that there's gonna be like a day that you're going to be productive, and this might look like most days or most mornings, or, you know, only maybe a certain phase of the month, whatever it is, right? You're kind of moving towards your energy. It might not be every single day, but whatever day it is that you are being productive, it's important for you to have some sort of list so that you have some sort of direction, because obviously if you want to be productive and get things done, you probably have a lot of little things that you need to do, and writing them out and just knowing what you're doing before you get into this flow is going to be so crucial. And when you write things out and you actually look back at it and you say, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, you're honestly more calm, and you're not gonna get into this nervous system state of like stress and anxiety. One helpful tip when it comes to making a list is to put the most energy, I don't even wanna say energy draining, because we don't like to drain the energy here as much as we can, but to put the most important task first. Really and truly, there's gonna be many things when you put on a list that you're just not gonna get done. There's so many things, even though I've kind of mastered my energy and I know what I can do and when to do it, there's still things I just won't get done, but I wanna make sure that I'm putting the most important thing, best return on my investment, technically, which is my energy, first. If you don't have a plan when it comes to your health, when it comes to fitness, business, really anything, it's gonna be quite easy for you to kind of fall off things, because you're just gonna feel like you have no direction. You kind of need that masculine structure in your life. All right, the next thing before we talk about taking action is your mindset. It's important that you learn to silence your inner critic in the nicest way, though, in a loving way. So you should have probably already watched the video that I talked about before this one, but if you didn't, I'm gonna quickly talk about the fact that we talked about in that video that we have an inner critic, the part of us that wants to just be super productive and always on and whatever, and doesn't understand that, you know, doing things all the time actually burns us out. And what's gonna happen when you start to do things a different way, you know, move towards your energy, move towards a flow state, do something different, that part of you is gonna come online, and it's gonna tell you, no, wrong, you need to do more, you need to work harder, you need to work faster, da 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 da. And you're going to have to, as that adult conscious person, be like, I'm so sorry, but not today. Or like, old story, limiting belief, we don't need to think about that, we're not doing it. Whatever it is, you need to kind of silence that inner critic, because what's gonna happen is it can get so loud sometimes that you actually don't end up taking that action. And this is especially true, this part of you especially comes online when you're about to do something that might be kind of challenging for you. So I'll give you an example for my book. This is the first book I've ever written, and there's so many complicated things and structures, and, you know, I don't know, this is my first time doing it. I have an editor and is helping me and all this kind of stuff, but still, this is brand new to me. So naturally, I'm gonna have an inner critic that not only wants to just like be super productive and just like do everything perfect, but also that part of me has a lot of self-doubt and says, you can't do it. See, like when it feels hard, like you can't do it, you should give up, blah, 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 blah. And it's important for you to not let that part take over you. And another thing is, when you start something, let's say we're talking about the gym, okay? You've done it a million times. This is not something new to you. When we are doing something that is kind of hard and, you know, a little bit like it's something usually towards a goal, something that makes us a little bit uncomfortable, there's gonna be like that 10, 15, 20-minute period when you first start something that's gonna feel uncomfortable. So whether that be waking up in the morning and deciding that you're gonna get yourself up when you're tired to go to the gym, or when you start writing, there's this period, or when you start studying, there's this period of like resistance, of like stress and just like confusion, or, you know, just irritation of starting the task. But then once you get into it, it's like, I'm here. You know, when I'm writing and I'm in the flow, it's like, yes, this is exactly what I want to be doing. Or when you're at the gym, it's like you're already there, you're listening to your music and you're feeling so good, and you know the feeling that you get when you leave the gym. Like, it's always that you having to get over that slump. So when inevitably your inner critic, that part of you, feels that slump, it's gonna wanna talk you out. It's gonna wanna be like, no, it's too hard, you can't do it, or whatever, tomorrow, whatever. Just know that you might have to coach yourself, that part of you, through that slump. So what I do when I'm writing, I naturally will tell myself, okay, like let's say like this week I'm gonna be writing, I have a lot of time and I know that my energy is gonna be up, and I just like know that this is the week that I'm gonna be writing. I'll naturally have this knowing already that when I first start writing, it's not gonna feel comfortable. It's gonna feel kind of hard, a little bit challenging, not in a way where I'm setting myself up for failure and being like, oh my God, it's gonna be so hard, right? But naturally, I'm basically allowing myself to hold space for the part of me that's going to feel like it's gonna be really hard. Just knowing that there's gonna be that little period of time, but then also telling myself, as soon as I get past that, it's gonna be smooth sailing. And sometimes your inner critic and that part of you just really needs to know that. Sometimes when you do something for the first time or it's hard, you need that parent in a way to just tell you, you know what, it's gonna be hard right now, but you can do it, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it, until you can actually start riding the bike with no training wheels. And then it's like, it's amazing, right? It's like, I can do it, oh my God, I'm finally doing this, da, da, da. So just knowing that before getting into something is huge, and actually like either speaking it out or like thinking it in your mind, of that acknowledgement of, you know what, most likely when I wake up tomorrow, I'm gonna have my inner critic be like, oh my God, I don't wanna do it. That 10, 15 minutes being like back and forth, should I do da da da? Just know that that's gonna be a thing, and try not to let that inner part of you spiral, right? Because sometimes when you think about how hard it's gonna be too much, you'll talk yourself out of it. Okay, next let's talk about action. So what I've found over the past 2 years about being productive is, you know, there's different ways that you can get things done. And I found that when I first was in this like masculine productivity, whatever, I learned this idea of doing time blocking. So basically you're going to set a timer for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, and then you're gonna take a 10-minute break, and then you're gonna go back. It's very masculine, but it does work. A lot of the times it does work. And I find that that type of time blocking helps with people who have really short attention spans, or is like, it's a very starter beginner way of getting yourself on track when it comes to being productive. And I'm gonna link down below some of the, I watched these study with me playlists. So some of them have just like an hour of a timer at the side of the TV, and they play like really beautiful music with a beautiful view, and you're actually like studying with somebody, and it's just like you kind of like pick how many hours you want to do. But then also there's other ones, I forget what the name is, I'm gonna put it on the screen, but basically it's the same type of format, but they'll time you and they'll do like 50-minute increments and then a 10-minute break and then 50 minutes just to kind of break things up for you. So there's different ways in which that you can time block. But just remember that it's just one way, and it is very masculine. And another thing that you can do is more of a getting into a flow state. So a flow state is really, you know, after you get past that slump and you start writing or you start working out or you start doing whatever, and things are feeling so good and you're just letting yourself go. You're not telling yourself to stop. Because one thing about doing that flow state, if you were to do the time blocking and you told yourself only 50 minutes, if you were in a flow and you're really writing and then the timer goes up and you stop yourself and you take a break, sometimes the break is great, but what happens is when you try and go back into that flow state, you're gonna have to go over that slump again, and that might be kind of difficult. So I think with the flow state, it definitely depends on what it is that you're trying to do. I find flow state really helps more if you're more of a creative, but also when you have really mastered your energy and your time and you've healed that part of you that's been trained to be very toxic when it comes to productivity. Because what can happen with flow state is you just keep flowing. you just keep going and going and going, and then you never take a break. And that's obviously not helpful as well. And I honestly can tell you from being a creator and kind of working through this for the past few years, there is nothing better than you following your energy. The things that are created and the things that I do based off of my energy state it just blows me out of the park. So I think you should try both time blocking and more of a flow state to see what works for you. Again, you don't need to be perfect with this, and you can incorporate certain ones. You're gonna need to understand yourself, your energy, what works for you, and kind of take note of how much you're actually getting done using both methods. I find now when I move towards more of the energy, more of the flow state, kind of capitalizing on when I'm ovulating, when I have the most energy, I get so much of my work done that it ends up being the equivalent and way more than I would if I did the more masculine structure every single day for an hour I'm gonna be writing, or every single day I'm gonna be doing 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off, things of that nature. And I will say one thing, it can be difficult to kind of be more in that energy flow depending on your lifestyle as well. When I was working my 9 to 5 and I was doing bartending and whatever, I didn't really have that much accessibility to be able to constantly follow my energy state. There was deadlines that I needed to get done. There was things I need to do. It's totally understandable. And even in my life right now, being a content creator and having way more time, freedom to do what I want, there's still things that I need to do. There's still times when I'm, on my period that I still need to get a video up or I need to do something. But when I have learned to follow my energy state, the things that I'm producing out of that state end up covering all the rest of the month of work that I would need to do. So there's definitely room for both, no matter where you're at in your life, whether you're working a bunch of jobs or not, but it's really just you learning to explore what works for you. Now, when we are on a path of growth, on a path of hitting a goal, we are like set on something and we're working towards something, it's amazing, it's great, but sometimes it's very lonely. Sometimes it's lonely to the point where we actually don't want to work on this thing because it's boring. Like sometimes like thinking about writing my book at home, doing the same thing on my laptop every single day, it's boring. It's kind of like giving scary energy. It's giving very empty. It's kind of giving like depressing in a way sometimes when you kind of want to, do something that you're working towards. Even going to the gym sometimes, it can just be lonely. So what's important for you to realize is, how often are you feeling alone when you are doing these things? And if you are, then it's really important that you incorporate some connection as you're moving towards something in your life and you're being productive. So that can look like simply going to a coffee shop. We all know that working at a coffee shop, you feel the vibes of everyone else working at the same time. If you're in school, going to the library instead of sitting in your room and just being cooped up and whatever. And I get it. Sometimes we just tell ourselves like, it's just easier to do it here. But the energy and the connection that you can feel when you go out and work around people can be very helpful. You can co-work with a friend. So if a friend is doing something like studying the same thing that you are, or even if you guys are doing completely different things, I went and co-worked with my friend when I did my social video, which I'll have linked down below, as a form of connection. And I taught her something and she taught me something, but we also like did our own separate things. And if you can't even do that, if you just don't have the time to go to a coffee shop and you just don't have friends to go to co-work, letting your friends know what you're working on is actually so helpful. Like having a friend who knows that I'm like a content creator and like today I'm filming, or today I'm working on this, or I'm going here to do this, it actually feels like you're more connected because your friend's asking you questions because your friend knows what you're doing. Like I have 2 close friends who are content creators, so naturally I talk to them on a week-to-week basis about what I'm doing, and I feel less alone because I know that they're going through that same thing. And maybe your friends aren't going through that same thing, but again, them just knowing that you're doing it, and it's not even about them holding you accountable necessarily. The mere fact of they know that Alicia, tomorrow she's filming videos, or she's doing something with her YouTube, or she's doing something with the podcast, like I think it just makes you feel like you're just less alone. My biggest takeaway though is to realize that you don't have to be perfect, and let yourself try out new things. And sometimes you're just going to have to tell yourself that whatever you did today was good enough. Now, if you're on a path of building your dream life, which you probably are if you're watching this video, or you have some sort of goal, but particularly when it pertains to building your dream life, maybe while you're working your 9 to 5, or you're working a job that maybe you don't completely love, And you know, what I've talked about in this video has helped me get to the position that I'm at, full-time content creator, doing what I love, talking about what I love, and making the most money I've ever made. Then I want you to go watch a video on the screen right now. I made a video on how to create your dream life while working your 9 to 5. And hopefully those tips can help you if you're somebody who's kind of interested in doing the same thing. When I mean the same thing, I don't mean being a content creator. Those tips are helpful for whatever you're trying to work towards. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. Please let me know if you liked it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for new videos every week, and I'll see you next time. Bye.